Chapter 18. While his wedding was only a few hours away, he couldn't stay away from his bride, who was stuck in the kitchen making rolls for her own wedding. As he ducked through the back door, expecting her to be in a foul temper, her humming and dancing around the kitchen took him off guard. "Well, aren't you in pleasant spirits?" He caught her about the waist as she waltzed by him. She laughed.
"Why wouldn't I be? In a few hours, I will have the husband I've always wanted, a new home and a purpose."
He gently kissed her nose. "You had a purpose before, but I sure am glad I'm the focus of it now." He slipped a paper from his vest pocket and handed it to her.
"You'll have to read it. My hands are sticky."
She grinned at him. How he loved that smile. "I don't have to read it. I read it before I signed it. It's the legal certificate that says we can get married this afternoon. Once you sign it, it's legal." Heat rushed to Isabel's cheeks. He'd never tire of seeing that pretty pink. He still couldn't fathom how this beautiful, intelligent woman would ever want anything to do with him. "Are you glad you chose to come to Belle Fourche, Isabel? What if you lose interest?" She shook her head and smiled.
"I'm so glad I came. And you'll have to tie me to a runaway horse to get rid of me. And I know you'll keep me busy until I don't know what to do."
He prayed it wasn't just him that kept her busy, but the baby she wanted so very much. That they both wanted. He'd never even thought about children until Isabel. Now, they wanted to fill his small home to bursting with them. Isabel's mother and father strode into the kitchen.
"Conrad Olson, you get out of here. Don't you know it's bad luck to see your bride before the wedding?"
He hadn't known, and it wouldn't have mattered. He wanted to see her no matter what. He scooped her close and ran his finger over her lip, testing its softness. Her gaze found his and kindled a lightning-hot fire in him that only she could tame. He bent and kissed her lips gently, tasting the cinnamon from where she had tested her confections earlier. He waited to feel her pull closer to him, to draw him nearer to her. How he loved that she hungered for him as much as he for her. As he drew away, Mrs. Harmon threw a tea towel at him.
"Now, get out."
He laughed. "Yes, ma'am." To his bride, he whispered, "Soon, my love." Isabel loved her parents, but she hadn't wanted to talk to either of them. The wound was still too fresh. Her mother had chosen to believe a lie rather than her own daughter. Tension in the kitchen built now that they were alone. "Izzy, your ma and I, we were so worried about you when we got your letter. We didn't know what you were thinking, running off to Belle Fourche instead of coming home. Thought you might be out of your mind with grief. Your ma, she was torn clean apart by your letter." He put his arm around his wife in support. "Harland acted like he was so good to you. He always made it sound like he was taking good care of you." Her pa shook his head. "I can't believe we didn't see it." They had refused to see it, but she wouldn't dwell on the past. Harland was gone, and she never wanted to be alone again. Her parents could be forgiven. They had seen so little of what had happened, and Harland had been a good liar. "We both talked with Mr. and Mrs. Olson about Conrad, something that we never did with Harland. We just took his word when he said he was in love with you and wanted to spend his life with you. He looked like he would have a good job, and we trusted him." Ma stepped forward.
"Your father and I will be leaving tomorrow. There's no real reason for us to stay any longer."
Isabel wiped her hands on her apron. While it wasn't her mother's fault she had married that fool, she had been the driving force that kept her there. If not for her mother's chastising words, she would have left Harland, begged to stay with them. If her mother had allowed her to come back home, she never would have lost the baby. because it never would have been planted to begin with.
I know now my advice was wrong.
But what else could I say? You were a married woman. We had no idea he would wed you so quickly. We thought he'd wait until the end of the school term since you were already through half of the year. Isabel didn't want to hear excuses for why anymore. Her heart was too full of Conrad to ever let Harland take back even a bird's portion.
Mother, it's done. Over. I tried to get you to listen to me through my letters, but I know that I was not plain enough in my speaking for you to understand what life was truly like. And I couldn't explain any further, for fear he would somehow find my letters. There was a time I even feared that you would tell him. You see me now, how I am after weeks of being cared for by Moretta and Conrad. You didn't see the waif that came here, running because she had nowhere to go. We would have taken you in. You're a widow, Izzy." Her mother stepped forward and reached for her. While Isabel wanted to forgive, was trying so hard to forget, she couldn't accept her mother's affection yet. She stepped out of reach. It was difficult not to seat blame for the loss of her child just as much in her mother's lap as Harlan's. "You would have taken me in? Perhaps, but you wouldn't have listened. You still didn't want to believe that I wrote to you until you thought I was in danger, and you were worried you might never see me again. Pain will bring out the truth." Ma rested her hands on the counter. They were strong, calloused hands, which had raised 7 boys and 1 girl. Only now was she finally allowing herself to slow down a bit and let her boys and their wives do the work. "We believe you now. Isn't that what matters?" she whispered. "It's a start." Isabel pulled the finished rolls from the oven and left them on the counter to cool. "Excuse me, I need to go get ready for my wedding. I'm glad that you can stay, and you and Pa are welcome here any time you want to visit. But today, I refuse to bring up the past. I don't want to remember a single moment of it. Conrad is better on his worst day than Harland was on his very best, and I refuse to examine my mistakes anymore." Her pa sighed heavily. "I know Conrad's parents would probably tend to give him a glowing report, but they were honest. You don't need our blessing. You're a woman full grown. But if you care to have our blessing, you have it." A slight peace rested over her shoulders. Not only could she be with Conrad, she could reach out to her parents once again when she was ready. The hole left in their absence slowly filled. "Thank you. That does mean a lot. I was so worried you'd never accept me again, that you loved Harland more than me." "You're our daughter. That could never happen. We knew you were unhappy, but many wives are at first. Married life isn't like the life of a child without responsibility." Isabel bristled at the reminder. She had barely been an adult when she'd set her vows, but had been forced to grow up quickly. "Your time to counsel has come too late." Every word her parents said would now be examined for its meaning. They hadn't cared about her for far too long. "You won't be coming to visit us, will you?" Ma wrapped her arms around her waist, her shoulders hunched and her expression haggard. "No. Conrad runs this ranch, and I don't see us leaving for any length of time." And she wouldn't voluntarily leave him. Not ever.